Best thing that Miles ever said to me was, "Don't play the butter notes."
Whenever he sat at the piano, the room would immediately go quiet. Within his hands are records and gigs done many years ago. He was performing in both big and small clubs, in studio sessions, and on big stages during festivals. He was trusted and admired by his fellow musicians and producers too. Certain recordings were turned into norms. Now we are going to open a list of 7 musicians who influenced his music and his career. Every name is associated with an identity, a place, a performance, or a stage that he once set foot on. The novella starts with the initial piano on which he placed his hand. We are getting out of town and into a studio, out of trumpet heroes and still piano lines, out of nightclubs and out of lights. But before we dive into names, you have to wonder who could possibly shape the genius of Herbie Hancock? And more importantly, whose influence would change his music forever? Miles Davis. Miles Davis is a shaper of a generation. He has a talent for playing trumpets in a unique way that blends in perfectly with any music. In 1963, Herbie Hancock was added to the band of Miles Davis. He was 23 years old at that time. The collaboration with Miles gave Hancock the golden opportunity to record and perform on the stages of the United States and Europe. Some of the main albums of the time were ESP in 1965, Miles Smiles in 1967, and Nefertiti in 1968. The albums were prepared in New York and bore a different type of group sound. Miles Davis taught by example. In a later interview, Hancock said that an erroneous note might be transformed into new music by someone who is not afraid of such a heavy task. This lesson defined his entire career. Miles taught him how to survive in the industry. He mentored him on how to respond to the media and how to balance his life in order to be successful. The band performed in nightclubs and large halls, such as the Village Vanguard and Carnegie Hall. The songs Hancock wrote suited the style and mood of Miles. He was an electric and acoustic piano player on various occasions. The sound on stage used to change depending on the song that was being performed. At times it was parsimonious, and other times it was thick. Hancock had to know how to twist a song so that the trumpet would be heard more. Other musicians such as Wayne Shorter and Tony Williams were also introduced to him by Miles. Miles encouraged the band to capture new concepts. Their recordings in Columbia were mostly room recorded by producers. This brought about questionable comments from different people, including event promoters. The mid-1960s press reviews were mainly about a new sound in jazz. Young players started to take a keen interest in those records and even copied some lines. In addition to the studio work, Hancock and Miles were on tour in Europe and North America. During the tour, they performed not only in concerts, but also in clubs. Those tours provided Hancock with a regular activity and with his living lab of new music. To make their performance lively, Miles would leave a song open, and Hancock would fill the gap with one pitch or a chord. Many Miles Davis records had an edit and tape work done by the studio producer Tio Macero. Those production decisions had an effect on Hancock too in his subsequent recording. In the year 1960, Hancock released the album of his own, titled Maiden Voyage. In that record, there were some notable inspirations from Miles. But just as Hancock was shaping his voice under Miles, another figure stepped into the story, one who would challenge, inspire, and even redefine his path. Who was this mysterious force? Wayne Shorter. Wayne Shorter also played a very important role in the life of Herbie Hancock and his music career. Shorter died in Los Angeles on the 2nd of March, 2023, but was born in Newark, New Jersey on the 25th of August, 1933. In the late 50s, Shorter got into the Jazz Messengers led by Art Blakey. He became part of Miles Davis in 1964. Herbie Hancock and Wayne Shorter worked in that direction. Shorter composed songs that are still being played by some musicians. In his albums there was Speak No Evil, which was recorded in December 1964 and released in 1966, featuring Herbie Hancock playing piano. Footprints was originally tracked on Shorter's album, Adam's Apple, in 1966 and subsequently on a Miles Davis album. Those songs have contributed to making Shorter a composer who was studied. Hancock and Shorter toured and spent time together in the studio in the mid-1960s. They played in several places. When Shorter was leading a band, Hancock frequently performed or dispatched musicians with whom he felt safe. Their relationship was very strong. They were more than just bandmates. Hancock was a trusted pianist and individual for Shorter. Hancock commended Shorter for his weird yet simple tunes and the manner in which Shorter composes lines that give space to other musicians. Half-formed Weather Report together with Joe Zawinul in the early 1970s. The band brought jazz to electric sound and rhythms. Hancock observed those developments and experimented with different groupings himself. Shorter collaborated with Joni Mitchell, Carlos Santana, and Steely Dan. Those collaborations demonstrated the extent to which Wayne Shorter could be reached. Studio tapes revealed that Herbie Hancock and Wayne Shorter were trying to advance their music style. Hancock recalled Shorter as an impatient composer who wanted to immediately have a clear picture of what the lyrics were about. During interviews, Hancock described Shorter as a good friend, even as time changed. At the time Shorter died in 2023, there were numerous songs and stories shared by different musicians about what they had experienced with him. Hancock frequently talked about Shorter and their friendship in interviews. They frequently recorded at Van Gelder Studio and also performed in the Village Vanguard and at major European festivals at that time. Shorter left a collection of recordings that trace a journey in modern jazz. The map was convenient for Herbie Hancock. He applied Wayne's concept in solo, written, and band work. It was an occupational friendship that made the two men, but if Hancock's bond with Shorter shaped his path, another force would completely redefine it. A voice on the saxophone that bent time, harmony, and even belief itself. The question is, how did Coltrane's sound change everything? John Coltrane. In the 50s and 60s, John Coltrane transformed the music of the saxophone and ensemble. Coltrane was born on September 23, 1926, and he died on July 17, 1967. His association with Miles Davis and his own records established an example that was to be emulated by numerous performers. Hancock was introduced to Coltrane records when he was a young pianist, and he went on to talk about the strength of Coltrane's solo lines. Coltrane recorded songs that challenged the normal harmony and rhythm. Albums like Giant Steps in 1960 and A Love Supreme in 1965 are what generations have followed. The solos and the sheets of those records made the pianist think quickly and find new forms of chords. That is how Hancock, through the records, learned how to maintain a stable pulse when he was shuffling the harmony in small steps. In interviews, Hancock observed that the phrasing by Coltrane possessed some element of searching. It was a pure and strong sound. That feeling gave Hancock the desire to experiment with different forms using his right hand, while his left hand maintained a beat. When touring, he kept Coltrane records in his bag. Those records served as recurring points of reference on phrasing and tone. Coltrane went on to demonstrate how music was an exercise of spirituality. Hancock applied that concept both in life and in some of his albums, where he was looking to find a serene focal point. Hancock would play a short phrase on the road, which would remind one of a Coltrane phrase. The line could be some memory or some lesson in tone control. Coltrane happens to be the predecessor of many jazz students who refer to him when they need to hear a clear and full recording of his songs. Herbie Hancock was taught how to read such examples and subsequently decide differently based on such examples. Hancock would apply the tools that he had acquired in Coltrane when he transitioned to electric instruments and funk. A Love Supreme came out in the Impulse documentary in the year 1965. In 1960, Giant Steps was on Atlantic. Those were widely sold to outlets in Europe and Japan. But while Coltrane's fire reshaped sound, there was another figure quietly bending the rules of harmony, almost rewriting the language of jazz itself. Without him, would Hancock's path have sounded the same? Bill Evans. Bill Evans instructed a generation of pianists on how to think of the best harmony. His birth date was August 16, 1929. He passed on the 15th of September, 1980. In 1959, Michael played on the record of Miles Davis titled Kind of Blue. That record informed the modern jazz harmony, and it got into the hands of many young artists, including Herbie Hancock. Soft touch and close chords that resembled small color changes were employed by Evans. Pianists were taught to lower the bass and give space to the bass player. That thought aided Hancock as he commenced playing bands in which light touch and wide harmony were used. Hancock mentioned that he had always admired Bill Evans since he was a kid. Evans was the leader of a group comprising 3 people that transformed the sound that a small number of people could produce. Records such as A Portrait in Jazz and the trio work with Scott LaFaro and Paul Motion exhibited a novel form of conversation between bass, drums, and the piano. Those 3 records were performed with labels like Riverside and Verve. Hancock listened to Evans' songs and inspired him to create his own. Bill Evans also released Amar songs that came to be the norm. Other songs like Waltz for Debbie and Peace Peace have great melodies. The songs were sung by musicians in schools and many other places. Herbie Hancock always used the same songs to coach young artists. One of the Evans records would have been pointed at by Hancock, and he would have said, "Listen to the left hand," or "Listen to the way the chords go." He had captured his recordings in Rudy Van Gelder's studio and in New York nightclubs such as the Village Vanguard. Conservators learned his voicings and style of treating trio music. Evans abused drugs, which later affected his health. Although he had died young, he left a set of records that continue to be listened to. Those records are both models and tools used by Hancock. He applied the ideas of time and touch that were proposed by Evans. His influence was a breakthrough for Herbie Hancock and many others. But if Bill Evans gave Hancock the language of sound, then Quincy Jones gave him the language of survival. Because Evans shaped his hands, yet who shaped his future? Quincy Jones. Quincy Jones occupied numerous positions in the music sector, which had an impact on Herbie Hancock. He had occupied the role of a composer, arranger, producer, and band leader. He also scheduled Frank Sinatra, film scores, and performances in the jazz, pop, and motion picture fields. Quincy was one of the musicians who took care of Hancock when he was a young boy. Quincy demonstrated how to go between jazz and the broader music business. He collaborated with film studios, record labels, and concert promoters. Those relocations helped Hancock know how a musician can retain his creative voice when he works in numerous sectors. Big bands and small groups were also hired by Quincy. His experience in charts and studio work was of use to several of the young artists. It was Quincy who taught Hancock how significant arrangements and writing lyrics are. Quincy instructed the positioning of a melody in such a way that the voice would be floating over the band. The ideas were used by Herbie Hancock when he organized portions of his own records. He heard Quincy's records and the hits Quincy made. Quincy also composed film scores and worked in TV. His film and music skills made Hancock know how to picture a mood and write consciously. Hancock subsequently authored films and media projects that required a balance of mood and groove. Quincy was well established in the Los Angeles and New York studios. He used his status to assist and employ the upcoming artists. The music industry side of Quincy's work was important. He knew producers, directors, and label people. Hancock watched how Quincy moved in the industry and how he protected his music ideas. Hancock used parts of that skill whenever he was negotiating and also when he was choosing his record producers. Quincy stayed active long into later life. His work in pop and film widened the scope of jazz for many artists. For Hancock, the lesson was practical. Creative work could cross genres and still be authentic. Quincy's taught how to attract a bigger audience with the power of one's voice. Quincy's influence on Hancock was great and impactful. Herbie Hancock followed the way Quincy organized big sounds and the way he managed his performances. The result was a musician who could play in a small band, lead a group, and make records for film and radio without losing their sound. Quincy Jones also mentored producers. This shows how true a leader he was. But Hancock's story didn't just stop with Quincy. Another force was rising at the same time, someone who would challenge him, inspire him, and push jazz into uncharted territory. Who was it? Chick Corea. Chick Corea was a pianist who crossed styles and kept pushing to be a better artist. He was born on June 12, 1941, and later died on February 9th, the year 2021. During his time here on Earth, Corea and Hancock moved in the same circles in the late 1960s and 70s. Both played with Miles Davis at different times, and both led important groups after leaving Miles. Chick Corea wrote songs that became part of the modern repertoire. Pieces like Spain, 500 Miles High, and Windows appear in many set lists. Corea formed Return to Forever, a band that mixed jazz, rock, and Latin music. That push toward electric sound sat near Hancock's experiments with fusion. Herbie Hancock and Chick Corea shared the stage on duo tours. In 1978, they played acoustic pianos in a documented tour that became a two-record set called An Evening with Herbie Hancock and Chick Corea. The concerts were recorded in San Francisco, Los Angeles, and other cities. The tour challenged their abilities, as it was not a walk in the park. The relationship was a mix of companionship and rivalry. They both wanted to explore, to be original. That rivalry kept them on their toes. They respected each other's skills, and they often shared about each other's strengths in interviews anytime their relationship was questioned. Corea moved into electric bands and then back to acoustic work many times across his career. The different choices helped Herbie Hancock learn about flexible identity in music. He watched how Corea led groups and how he wrote lyrics for electric and acoustic songs. Their duo concerts included standards, original pieces, and spontaneous improvisations. They synchronized their skills perfectly without overpowering the music. Correa played on Miles Davis records like In a Silent Way and Bitches Brew. He won many Grammy Awards, serving as a model for many upcoming keyboard players. His career kept Hancock alert to new sounds and new bands. That influence ran across many decades. But if Correa pushed Hancock toward fearless experimentation, what happens when we look at a pianist whose command of technique and rhythm was so complete that it redefined jazz mastery itself? Oscar Peterson. Oscar Peterson was not only an international master of his technical pedals, but also an inspiration to other young, inexperienced artists. He was born on August 15, 1925 in Montreal, and he died on December 23, 2007. Oscar played a fast, clean game with a touch that made him world famous and an apt swing. The musician played trios and big bands and recorded over 200 albums. He collaborated with Ray Brown, Herb Ellis, and a number of the best. His solos were highly spiritual, though their movement was controlled. Young pianists trained upon his runs and his distinct grasp of rhythm. When Oscar was learning how to play, Herbie Hancock was one of his listeners. The right-hand speed, the thumb machinery, and the mastery impressed Hancock. During his sessions with Hancock in Chicago and New York, those aspects were introduced to him. In very dense passages or in lines where a good sound was required, Hancock always resorted to the ideas of Peterson. Oscar toured Europe, North America, and Japan, playing clubs, concerts, and festivals. His 3 songs were recorded with the Verve and Mercury labels, and they were listened to by the masses. These records revealed the possibility of creating a solo, supporting it with the left hand, and making a personal statement. Masterclasses were also taught by Peterson. He desired artists to train in technique and get prepared for the requirements of a lengthy concert. Hancock followed that discipline later in his music career. It was all about practice and emphasis on sound. The same cannot be said of the effect of Oscar on Hancock, like the harmonic lessons of Bill Evans. Hancock relied on Peterson to show him how to control technically and also to produce a clear, serious swinging sound. Hancock used to pick particular tools of Peterson and combine them with what he learned from the many artists he got the chance to work with. He accompanied Ella Fitzgerald and Louis Armstrong, and he released a famous trio recording that is still in popular demand. He was a performer in Carnegie Hall, in great festivals, and on radio performances. In the case attributed to Peterson, Hancock witnessed the role of a pianist as a commanding figure to drive a trio. The technical standard set by Peterson became one of the fundamental studies of many students in the conservatories. To this day, the students study his finger drills. In the case of Hancock, the lesson of it was that obvious good technique opens musical options. The concept pressed Hancock into the path of group work, solo recording, and instruction of young musicians. Herbie Hancock's journey proves that greatness is never built alone. It's shaped by the giants who came before him. But which of these 7 legends influenced him most in your eyes? Did one surprise you? And if you could ask Herbie about your favorite musician, who would it be? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you for watching.